Okay, so I've set up a little portion of the script that we can, before we go into this next section, we can kind of practice a couple techniques on, and then we'll basically do it in our actual full script. So this giant thing, all of the stuff that we did is all of the alpha. So I've basically shrunk it down to be really simple. So we have our normal footage and we have the alpha. So this pre-comp, I've basically just pre-comped the work I've done so far into an alpha. So that image is rendered out from here. So I've just kind of pre-comped this out, which saves us having to have this giant piece of script. So what we're going to do in practice here is a couple more concepts that we haven't yet covered, and which are going to be important to get this character essentially not having these edges that are white and different colors and stuff like that. So we'll go back up here and just see the couple techniques we're going to go over. So we've already went over key light and how to use a key light to despill different areas. So for example, if we wanted to despill this green, we would just go here. We would give this a number, and then we can view it. So if we put a 1 in there, it's going to start to despill. And then we can put these basically other colors here, a little bit negative, and kind of just play around the values and essentially control that effect there. And one other thing, we can also use a little bit of the alpha despill bias, which kind of shifts how that color is being used. Although I don't use the alpha bias too much if I'm just doing a pure despill. And the other thing we could do, screen balance kind of shifts how the colors are used. So that's a quick overview again of what we were doing before. So just playing around with the numbers, and we can do a despill matte as well if we need to darken it. So that's how we would do the green screen. But the luminance is going to be a different matter. So if we look at, we can't really despill white, and that's not even really a spill technically. It's just the background colors showing through the semi-transparent parts of the image. So we have to approach it differently. And one other thing to note is on these really motion blur frames, if we look at those as well, we see some of the texture sort of coming through. This is like the correct shape of the band that we have swinging, but it's kind of showing the picture, like the beam that was behind through those colors, because that's the true color of those pixels. So we need to somehow pull off those without having, all this detail that's here. We can see it when we gain down. We need to pull off that light and not have that texture. So the easiest way to do this depends on different areas of the picture. So something like a really thin edge, we might approach differently than this whole area that is getting this whole texture. So I'm going to go over the easier one first, which is just dealing with the thinner edges. For example, these bright edges. And then, so we'll use the edge extend for that and this technique, which we'll explain. But then we're going to go and do edge painting, which is a little bit more manual work. And sometimes, like you guys have seen, you have to get in there a little bit and do a little bit of manual painting to fix things. And lastly, we'll do a color replacement. So this is like replacing an entire section of a picture, similar to this rope where we can kind of replace what's there. And lastly, we'll cover dynamic despill, which is a little bit covered separately. I might cover it in a different section if we need to use this. This is less commonly needed, but definitely a very, very good technique. So we'll talk about that last. So now we'll just talk about the first one, which is the edge extend. So I've created 2 nodes here, and if you hit Control-Enter on the nodes, you can actually see what's inside if you guys are curious. But these essentially do 2 things. One is an edge extend, and one is an edge matte. So I'm going to copy these down, and you guys can save these again in your menu. And I'll show you what the edge, the easy edge does. So basically, you take an alpha, you plug it in. So if you have our alpha that we've created here, never mind the RGB in this channel. This is just for the alpha. So if we plug that in, immediately what that does is it creates an edge mat. So we don't really have to do any manual work of setting up merge nodes and stuff like that. We can just plug it in and it will automatically make you an edge. So we can control the blur of the inside edge and we can control the blur of the outside edge independently of each other. So this is going to make it a lot easier for us to do color corrections and essentially get really detailed mats to control those areas. So this is how it works. It's pretty self-explanatory. You have an inner edge shrink, which shrinks the inner edge, outer edge expand, and then you can blur those independently. You also have the last control, which is overall erode. So if you need to, for some reason, push the edge inside or outward, you can do that. You won't need to use that very often, though. So essentially, we can use these edge mats. For example, if I wanted to go here and grade down or darken an edge. So I plug in the edge mat and I darken. So I can just bring it down. And you can see that darkening effect is only happening on the edge. So you guys can probably see where this is going. If we can make a thin color correction and darken an edge. And if we go to the pre-multiply, we can see that edge is starting to come through. Now this doesn't look very good. Right now our darkness is sort of happening a little bit too far in, so I guess that's where we could use the little overall erode. You can shove where that color correction goes. So you can kind of put it on the very edge and try to darken that edge, for example. And what you could do as well is, if you need to, you can adjust the alpha by putting a grade afterwards, and you can use the white point to kind of make sure that it goes pure white. For example, on this edge, it's only 0.95. It needs to be completely 1, so that's just something to keep in mind. You can always grade these alphas that you're creating. And you can see we get like a pure dark edge on there, which is not something we're going to want, but I'm demonstrating the idea. So, of course, you could use manual color corrections to go and darken these areas. So maybe you wouldn't go to black, you'd probably go to something a little bit closer, and then potentially you could put another color correction and then just kind of set the black point to the area around it. So maybe here. So you see it starts to hide the edge a little bit. And of course, this might not be the best area because it looks like our alpha has a little bit of gray in it, but you can expand the outside. So we could expand the outer blur. So we could expand it first, and then we could blur it. So you see we have a little bit of gray in our alpha, but just by expanding this edge mat, we actually kind of hid the gray. So if I look here at what we're doing, we have our edge mat and just expanding it outward. And so we're darkening the image like this. So this is actually how it's been affected, and the end result is something like this. Now this edge is maybe not perfect, and it's just an example. So you see we could use a darkening here, and maybe that would work, but it still might be a little bit tricky. And now you see, okay, well, every single edge has a different color. So that might not be the best way to approach something like this, but that's just an example of how the edge mats are working. So, for example, in these areas, it allows you to really color correct them. So it will work in some areas, and you will do this technique almost guaranteed every time. So the other thing we have is what's called an edge extend. So that was kind of an edge darkening, just using edge mat. We also have edge extend. Some of you guys are probably familiar, whoever's taking this tutorial, but we're just going to cover it. So what you can do with the edge extend, if you type it in, that's Nuke's edge extend tool. So if you plug in the alpha into the mat and the source into the source, essentially, if I close all this stuff, I'm going to turn off the pre-multiply, because we don't want to pre-multiply it yet. But essentially what it does is it looks at the very edge color and it pushes it outward. So it's just expanding that color, and it's kind of replacing the image beyond that point. So what you can do is if you pull the erode, you can actually shift where that point begins. So what it's doing is it's sliding and searching for the edge. So if you're sliding it inwards, it's looking at this edge and then pulling that color outward and replacing all of the image around. like so. And then you can, there's a thing here for detail. Sometimes you can kind of restore detail on the edge if you lose it. And, but sometimes it creates those nasty kind of black lines. So that's not always a particularly good setting. So if we just took that result, just the edge extended result, and we pre-multiplied it and we look at it, immediately you start to see, you know, we lost some detail on the edge, that's for sure, but it's solving, or at least like when you're zoomed out, it seems like it's solving a lot of the areas. So you got to be careful with these. I would only use edge extends on the most extreme cases, meaning if I could darken this and color correct it, I probably would go for that first. You'll see a lot of newer people, as soon as they discover edge extend, they will kind of just edge extend everything, and like they're over edge extending stuff. And once you get into a higher level of compositing, you're going to get called out for that, basically because you do lose some detail around the edge. But a lot of times, as a quick solution, if you're on a time limit or something like that, you could definitely edge extend. And you know, who's going to zoom into the pixels of this dude's ear? Probably not very many people. But yeah, once you start working a little bit more professionally, and or at least not necessarily professionally, but on a feature level, usually they want to retain as much edge detail as possible. So that's just all some caveats to keep in mind. So I can roll this back. Usually you want to keep your edge extend only to the very edge that you need it. So again, I would use edge extend in this case. I'm not saying that this is like a bad tool. I'm just saying don't edge extend everything. And I would try darkening first and see if you can retain detail first. But anyways, these lights, we're definitely going to need to edge extend, because you can't just darken that black. You actually need to, you know, pull out some of the color from the edge and keep it around. So yeah, well, basically I have a tool here. It's called Edge Push, and I just simplified this tool a little bit. It kind of works a little bit better, and it's basically pretty much the same as the ones on Nukapedia. So if you go on Nukapedia.com, there's other edge extends that people have made. And yeah, I don't know. Some of these actually seem to work better than the Foundry one. This is actually a newer node, so it's kind of weird. But yeah, it doesn't. I don't really use it that much because it doesn't work that great compared to this is the one I put together here. Let me plug it into the right picture. This is the alpha. So there's some RGB in here, but it's just messed up different stuff we did with our key. We were only paying attention to the alpha. So that could be a bit confusing if you're loading the script and you're looking at this. It looks all messed up, but yeah. So basically, if you look at this, it's kind of doing a trick called, it's kind of pre-multiplying the image. So how this technique actually works is like pre-multiplying the image. It's blurring the picture, and then it's unpre-multiplying the image. So what this actually does is it kind of smears the color outward. So I don't know, it's just sort of a way to pull out color from this. So if I plug this in here, pre-multiply, so I get the shape of the guy back, but you see the edge color is sort of taking on what's, it's kind of taking an average and pushing it outward. So I guess you could think of it like that. But anyways, the concept is it grabs the color from the edge and it pushes it outward. So you don't necessarily need to know how it's made right off the bat if you're sort of a junior compositor. But that's just, if you open it up, again, you can take your time and look through this and try to understand it if you're interested. So basically what you can do, I set up a couple controls here, and it's just exactly like the other tool. You can slide it into a position. You can shrink the outside. So you can just control the outside edge, and then you can control the inside edge. So this really allows us to replace this white color and really target an edge easily. And it just kind of works easier the way the edge appears compared to this edge extend. You can use either, whatever gets you the result. But so I'll push it in as far as I need to, and then I'll start to basically blur it. So maybe I'll push it a little bit further, and I'll start to blur it. It's because you want to essentially, you know, get in there and make that blend. You don't want to have a hard edge that you can see that it's an edge extend, basically. So, okay, so you can see edge extend. You might need to edge extend places differently. You see for the ear, it's way too far because we're actually losing a bunch of his ear. Whereas here, it might be the right amount because we need to go a little bit further because there's these semi-transparent materials that we're trying to kind of get all the white out of. So if I pre-multiply this, let me plug it in. And we'll look at the result there. So that's what this is doing, the edge push. One thing we need to, let me just make sure that that's not changing the alpha. Okay, so that's changing the alpha. I need to change one thing in that node. I guess I'll just do it real quick on the video. But we're supposed to actually maintain the original alpha from that picture. So here's a quick pause because I just rebuild this tool together. So this needs to go here. All right. It's just that, yeah, it's supposed to maintain the original alpha there. So if I enable and disable, it won't need any adjustment. So we can see that, you know, we're getting that edge there, and it's kind of replacing sort of the right color there. I would say, you know, it's a little bit tricky because it's a semi-transparent edge. So this is like an area that maybe you would, if we were just focusing on just this area, I would probably do this like a little bit of an edge extent, and then I would do a little bit of a color correction as well. So I would get an edge matte and maybe darken that same spot. So I would darken it like this, and then I would take the edge tool and sort of cover the same spot if we can. So something like that. So I've done these two corrections just for that spot, and then we could probably look at that over the background. That might be too much even. And there's ways to restore a little bit of that data as well. So sometimes you can edge extend and sort of key through as well if you want to do that. So maybe I would push that edge extend back a little bit just so it's only replacing the very edge. And you see that's doing a pretty good job now. So just by eroding that back a little bit in the edge push, you see how that works. And we can use a edge matte to adjust as well. So what I would do essentially is try to go around with your edge extend, see where it works, like look at this overall result. You know, we might not need to do this darkening on all of the areas. We might just need just an edge extend. And if we go around and we check our edges, you know, stuff like this is not necessarily the greatest. You want to try to get rid of those nasty edges, basically. So if we darken this, yeah, that's basically how it works. We need to go section by section, and it's on a per basis scenario. So I think that's pretty much it for edge extend and darkening.